Wait, hello, hi, friends and relatives. Welcome to another episode of The Glorious Mess. And we are très fatigués aujourd'hui. For those of my non-francophones listening, that means we are fucking tired today.
Yeah.
Uh, and I am just so excited, though, to be committing to this monthly practice of connecting to each other and connecting to you, our wonderful listeners. Um, yeah, let's get right into today. Ça va bien?
Right.
You know that there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot going on in our personal lives, and trying to find the balance within amidst the chaos and all of that wonderful stuff. We are going to go right in to some bits, but we always want to start things light. You don't just go full fist when you're doing fisting. You start gentle and then you slowly go all the way.
I love how
So,
our last episode
Get
was with our
elbows deep
parents
in there, you
going,
know?
ugh,
yeah. Yeah, the last episode was with our parents. I hope they don't listen to this
for our
episode. I'm so
moms.
sorry. I'm so sorry, moms. We have to break to the opposite end now that we did such a wholesome episode, that now we just focus on holes more generally.
I hope we cut this whole intro.
But and I know Taylor has an exciting icebreaker for us today. I think we should try this on each other
This
together.
icebreaker? Oh, good golly. You know what? Since that's your idea, you can go first then. Um, co Compliment sandwich. And you know
Okay.
what? Why don't you give me a nice juicy compliment sandwich? What kind of feedback, what kind of constructive criticism would you like to give me in a way that you think is going to be really endearing into my ears?
I'm gonna create a compliment sandwich, which is exactly what you just told me to do, but I felt like I just needed to say it again to
Yeah,
make space for the fact that I don't know what I'm gonna say.
yeah.
Um, I really love the way that you show up 100% authentically as yourself. And though sometimes I feel you can detach from things, I respect the way that you are resilient and strong. I don't know if I don't really stand by what I just said, to be clear. I was just trying to make a proper compliment sandwich.
I think you did beautifully. I think you nailed it in terms of all of my feelings are hurt. And in like the best way possible. Like I think you nailed it. And I still hate a compliment sandwich. So yeah, I think you nailed it.
You want to give one to Bronwyn?
She's like, no, please don't.
Go ahead.
Okay. Oh God. Now I'm so nervous. I don't even know what scenario.
Let's go.
Wow, you really had to lean in. All right, bet. Okay. I really like how you give space for conversation and any kind of conversation to be had. Sometimes they might not go the way that you would like. And I think we can allow that to have room to fester and not let it consume you. However, and yes, it's going to be a however, I think you are quite resilient no matter what the outcome is. So I think you still come on top no matter what.
Bro, I don't even know what the criticism was in there. There are so many words. I was like, are you saying I talk too much? Are you saying I like, I don't know. I think a compliment sandwich is more so,
Why don't you give me one?
okay,
It's your time.
Yeah,
okay,
it's your turn.
okay.
Go
RJ,
ahead.
RJ, I really like how you show up and you have this schedule to make things happen on time. However, you do tend to show up late a lot and make everyone wait for you, but you always come with great ideas and structure that we kind of make up for it. However, I would like you to work on your punctuality and not wasting people's time.
Was that a sandwich? That felt like it was a compliment, a slap, a compliment, a slap.
That was just like a one slice piece. Like that you didn't finish the sandwich. You just said, let me release the fact that I made everyone wait 30 minutes for me to record today's episode. But I can receive that. And I
Yeah.
thank you for that feedback.
I think originally I was like, I hate compliment sandwiches. I think I think it all comes down to, especially like in the workplace, I think that there's a way. I mean, in our society, compliment sandwiches has definitely become a thing more so, but I do think that there is a purpose for them sometimes, and it depends on who you're working with. Like if you know your employee or coworker well and they respond to that kind of feedback, then you can do it in a way that they hear it, where other people like direct. I think it's like you just have to know who you're
Yeah.
exchanging.
Yeah,
But
because like for me, like I the compliment sandwich, like the whole point of why you're giving it is so that you can give the feedback that you want to give. And so the
Hmm.
idea of slapping it with something before and after so it doesn't seem as harsh
Hmm.
feels
mhm.
like you're now taking that capability of dealing with that away from me as if that's your problem to deal with. Does that make sense? Like you're trying to like it almost feels like you're like fluffing up what you're trying to say to me
Hmm.
in a way that you think it's going to make me feel better without actually allowing me to make that determination for myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's not if what is the goal in the relationship? Like that's the
Right.
number one thing. Like I don't need you to compliment me. And if our relationship is healthy enough, it should be comfortable to receive criticism without these things. But you're right, bro, to say like place and time and
Right.
relationship. And so I understand why organizations use compliment sandwich as a way to like help curb employee feedback. And I'm like, but again, I'm like, it's kind of one of the failures of our society, of our like inability to be direct, but be direct from a place of like care. Like there was no part of me when you were saying, Bronwyn, like I don't like you were saying, I made you wait and I waste your time. And so for me, I disrespected your
Sounds so harsh.
time. No, no, but it's true. It's true. It's like I disrespected your time and made you wait for me because I was, late from a dance class, right? And so that's the important thing. And because I have a foundation of respect for you, I can receive that and that's okay. And so I
Yeah.
wish people more, I don't know, I wish people were a little bit more direct and also okay with like a bit of space to interpret and then go through the conflict.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah, that's
think
true.
like there's oh no, go ahead.
Nope, that's gone. Oh, fuck. I think also what it is we take things so personally, like
Hmm.
as a society now, and everyone's a little reactive. And I think
Hmm.
also because uh even like with the state of the world and people trying to make things more inclusive and like people are offended really easily these days or
Hmm.
like and I think because we don't practice directness so often
Hmm.
because we've tried to kind of like sugarcoat a lot of things, it's become harder to give direct feedback anyway.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You know what
Well, that's great what you were saying because that like what I was gonna say is that like I think we've what we need to focus on is like consideration. Like, what is the
Hmm.
point of what you're trying to say? Like, what are you actually trying to say? And how are you actually wanting that to come across to who you're talking to is
Hmm.
the important part. How you say it or what you actually say doesn't actually really matter. It's like, who are you actually talking to? And like that interaction, I guess, is, I don't know,
And
my brain like stopped working.
no, but when you
I mean?
said, I immediately got the thought, like, what do you mean to
Yeah.
me? Like, what is
Yeah.
that's, I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the conclusion of there, but yeah, like, what does this relationship mean to you? I'm your boss in this setting, and this will help us run this thing better in my perspective. Am I missing something?
Yeah.
Could I hear like that's one thing too, is like if I'm giving you feedback, there's like a finiteness or a definite that my thoughts and perspectives somehow are superior to yours. So I'm almost Jovi, you better get off that fucking couch. And so my thoughts of the situation, it's more interesting if you enter into the conversation like, hey, this thing happened. How was that from your perspective? And then you get to hear kind of how things were. And then you can say, well, from my perspective, I felt like it kind of went like this. And I think that's like a way better place to kind of move forward and
Yeah.
weaving this into the state of the world. Like I really understand why parents are scared of gender and sexual diversity education in schools because they don't understand it. And when they try to understand this thing, we meet them with, no, this is what it is and that's it. And there's no space for discussion. And so then they don't feel heard. And of course, then they become divided and they become against you. You're now their enemy. And so
Yeah.
just wish people, I don't know, I want people to like argue more, but like argue in the middle of like, this is how things are from my worldview, and then allow someone else to be like, here's my worldview, and both of you sit with that discomfort, and then what can we make, what path forward can we forge together?
Yeah, I think it's heavy on the like
RJ for
me
president.
with you instead of the me versus you, you know? Like a lot of these conversations, it feels like because we're having a conversation and it's like a two-way thing that it's like now I'm against you, like now we're opposites
Mm-hmm.
versus like we are still together. Like the whole point is that we have a relationship of some sort, whether we're
Mm-hmm.
boss, friend, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that is uniting us. We're not supposed to be having this conversation as like divided.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I guess let's talk current events. What in your version of events, what are some things that have been like on your mind or kind of reoccurring thoughts in the state of the world in the past like week?
The world's fucked.
I I it's hard to not just it's hard for me to wrap my head around like I don't usually read a lot of like comment sections. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just because but I have been because obviously everything's going on and it just blows my mind that there are people out there
Mm-hmm.
with a view so polar opposite to mine, and because you surround yourself with like-minded people with the same values, when you see somebody from like other side of the spectrum, like I just it blows like I can't believe people actually have these specific opinions. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem real to me. And the thing is also with the internet now, and this is what I've been thinking about, is so much of it is just like a void where people can find people with their same views. Where it's like
Mm-hmm.
before the internet, you would have your neighborhood and there would be somebody on the corner with their, but what if like majority, for example, what if the majority of the street has a viewpoint and then there's one person that doesn't? They will
Mm-hmm.
probably keep that a little bit more to themselves, or maybe it won't be so uh loud, if you will. Like it's kind of majority rules.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but now with the internet, that one person now can find billions of people with the same, so there's a little bit more fuel to everyone's opinion. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always proof. There's
Mm-hmm.
always proof that you're right. And so it's like millions of people standing, but like they said I'm right. And it's just yell, like it's just loudness everywhere.
Yeah. Just
No
scream and
conversation though
fight.
either. It's just here's my opinion. Here's my opinion. And like you were saying, there's no room for conversation. There's also like each side is right or wrong, where I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a few things that it can be uh this is actually one thing I've always respected about you is you like to converse with people. Even if they don't have the same view and maybe you are trying to open their eyes, you're never one to almost put them down. You're kind of like, I don't know, you've always been one person
To
like get
their
them to the
face.
table.
To their face,
Yeah,
to be
to
clear.
the yes. Yeah, yeah, this is true. But again, you encourage conversation and it
Mm-hmm.
is uncomfortable. But I
And
went on
it's
a
it
date once. Sorry, pause. I went on a date once and I was sitting next to somebody who was just never knew anything about the arts. Like this is a very minor experience. But he literally was like, "So you dance, does that mean you do like the Step Up movie stuff?" And I was like, what? And then just simple of like I forgot that there's people out there that are just super uneducated in that kind of thing. Anyway, I've lost my
that
train of
art
thought.
as
But
a
I don't know.
career.
Art is like, yeah, I know they're very much like I wish I was, creative. And I was like, well, okay, I'm guessing you play sports. He's like, yeah. And I was like, so you trained to be better at sports? And I was like, he's like, yeah. And I was like, so I trained to be better at dancing. Just like, like
You
it's
should
not
have
like you wake
left.
up.
Just
I
leave at that
did.
point.
I did.
Yeah, I would just
I did. But
Like this
anyway,
is
it's
not going to
wild. You
work out.
forget.
And
Yeah.
You
honestly, like,
forget.
how old were you? Like, 'cause if it's Step Up, like, were you 16? Like, there's been Step
Oh no,
Up
this
one,
was
two,
recently.
three,
This
I
was
was
four.
gonna
this
say,
was
wasn't this like a year ago?
yeah, a couple like maybe a year and a half ago.
Because like we're at Step Up, I think six, and there's the TV show too. Like, I think we need to
Yeah.
step. It's a really dated
Step it
knowledge
up.
for him.
Step up.
Step it up. Yeah. But that's no, you bring up like a good point. People don't know what they don't know. And online, a lot of people will hate on social media, but I'm like,
Yeah.
honestly, babe, like, no, we're actually just violent and toxic. Like all of us are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the unfortunate thing about the balance of the universe is that when we as like gender and sexually diverse people, racialized people get more weight amongst us, like what happened with George Floyd and the
Yeah.
conversation and what happened with the residential schools,
Yeah.
the kids who were found, we grew in voice. But at the same time, those other ends of the spectrum were also against it and they grew in voice too. So social media is just illuminating realities. And then
Yeah.
we're a part of so many issues that we can't as like individual human beings even keep up. Like and then
Yeah.
bringing it to the US, like 200
Well,
executive orders on day one. Personally, I went through, I think, 4 or 5 policies, and that took
yeah.
me like an hour, and I don't have that kind of time. And then a sociologist had pointed out to me, and by to me, I mean I've read a tweet of a sociologist. Sorry, I
Yeah.
don't know a sociologist. Pointed out like it's by design that you are overwhelmed because what happens is then media grabs what they can to tell a headline and a story. So you get fragments of
Yeah.
the facts, and then the media
Yeah.
is overwhelmed to tell the story. And then you're only engaging with a part. Nobody can vet information. Nobody can look at like executive orders aren't technically laws, but then they can become laws. And it's a bigger thing than just this the president signed a paper and therefore it's done. It's much more complex. And so Whoopi Goldberg on The View. I don't know if you saw this. She's been getting in
Yeah.
trouble and some heat, but she was saying like, let's see, let's wait and see. Because if we're responding to fragment bits of things, we're not going to be able to collectively organize enough. And it kind of was like, maybe you're right. Like, it's okay to, I don't want to invalidate that there's anger and I'm scared. And, if because my gender X on my license and with Polyev coming in, am I going to like be somehow like looked at differently by a more conservative government? Sure, but at the same time, like I can't also respond to 200 executive orders. I'm not also American. So what instead are the things that are important to me, but also important to my community and my relationships? And then what can I focus on? And then take it one step at a time. One
Yeah.
step at a time. There's no need to.
I also think what's happening as well, like, and there's a little bit, I think how sometimes happens with Canada too. It's like, oh well, it's the States, but
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
we're too close to me. Like to me, I'm like, but it's a that doesn't mean shit, and we have just as much. There's that other crazy conservative dude that's making waves over here too. That's like very similar to Trump, and
Polyev,
I think
Polyev.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think focusing on, I mean, for me too, it's like I just my immediate circle, it's like the ripple effect. Like when I can't
Mhm.
have those conversations with people in my real life, when I'm seeing stuff happening in the States and I check into what's happening with our own government too, like I think sometimes so much of social media too and all the propaganda is really United States focus all the time. So you
Yeah.
kind of like you have to sift through almost,
Mhm.
at least like where you can find stuff about this bullshit happening in Canada too. But
Well,
again,
there's
I'm still in this state where I'm like, I can't believe people's opinions exist that are different than my own. Like they're far over there. It doesn't
and you're
seem
like,
real
what?
to
And
me.
yet
Yeah.
there's something like they're like the character in the movie that you laugh at in a comedy, and then you're like, oh shoot,
Yeah.
they're a real person. And I have
Yeah.
to, and the hardest part for me lately is like I have to still love you. That's
Yes.
the hardest thing
Yeah.
for me. And Bell Hooks has a book all about love,
Well, do you still
and
have
it's
to
so good.
love them or do you still have to respect them?
My I guess my definition of love is more along the lines of respect, not like romantic or
No,
platonic.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I meant in the sense of like, I meant that, like, is there enough of an indicator of a difference between like having love for every individual on this planet, and
Hmm.
just respect for every
Hmm.
individual on this planet,
I guess
even as like just like a platonic
yeah, yeah.
person.
Yeah.
I think because I've been spending so much time with like bell hooks and this like deep-seated love, if I come at the person I dislike the most or don't agree with the most, and I come from a place of love, I think of the people in my life who've maybe been led astray in life. In the same way that we can be fed a narrative, they too can be fed a narrative and feel a part of something. And that's their human value to want to be a part of something and to feel
Yeah.
valid where they're at. So I guess by saying love, it gives me a space to put you in a place where I might put some people that are really, really important to me. And in that, try to find a way to understand so that somehow we can forge a path forward. And that means that I'm not necessarily getting that love back all the time, right? And that is hard. And um, that sucks, but I just I don't really think I've seen, at least in how our world exists, anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do. Like,
Yeah.
and Polyev is coming, and people are, things are fucking expensive. Like, thank God
Yeah.
I'm so sober because I have more money now than ever. But like, but like groceries are expensive. I went and bought like a meal one night the other day, like just like for tonight, and it was like $40. And I was like, wait,
Yeah.
what? This is
Eggs
like,
are like $12.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
insane.
And so I'm like, oh my God, like if groceries are expensive, it's because of the broader kind of economic focus of our world as a whole and global agricultural systems and how they all intersect and how we still rely on, slave labor in other developing nations to
Yeah.
produce our food so that we can pay the costs. So if we're not willing to take a global kind of perspective on reshaping food systems, but we're like, this is actually really important. This is collective. We need to look at this. But no, there is trans women in sports winning against women. So we need to focus on making sure they can't participate in sports. And I'm like, wow, that is such a small, small portion of kind of universal suffering that we see. And this
Yes.
this is the thing.
Yeah. Well, I saw a stat somewhere where it was like transgender folks make up like maybe only 2% or something,
Mhm,
like really small of the overall population, I mean, that we
mhm,
know of.
mhm,
And the fact that we're like focusing on this as being a main issue,
mhm,
like that's what we're focusing on. And look, it's not
What? Sorry.
feel like no, but it's like that's it's like similar to what you were just saying, RJ. It's just from going into this like they're picking the wrong thing. And I think
mhm.
also it's like so individual. It's also not an issue, period. But I think also the things that they're focusing about just doesn't seem to be the problem. Like housing, food, prices, like
Climate.
we're in recession, the climate, like focusing on universal care for people as like humans as a species. Like that's
Mhm.
what we should be focusing on, not it's just madness. Madness.
But that's the thing with like, I don't know. The more I spend time in this degree, like I said, it's fucked me up. I'm so excited to graduate this year in 2 short months. But like, if you think of like this land and like when you've got colonizers coming over, you've got like black bodies coming to produce work, develop and work a land. You've got displacement of indigenous peoples on their land, all for the colonizers to have kind of power. The crown is the pinnacle. All of these early, the Royal Proclamation of 1763, all of these historical documents, these maps of what was and who had what, is all these written down words and early legal system. It's all about the crown, the colonizer having the power. And so there was never space for gender diverse people in there. There was never space for sexually diverse
Yeah.
people in there. There was never space for racialized people for this. So when someone had said to me like, "Oh my," or I think it's my mom, bless her. She was like, "I can't believe that he took back like trans rights or something," and I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Of course he can, because if your whole entire fight for equity seeks to use the same tools that actually harmed you, no matter what." your progression means another identity suffers. And then on top of that, at any time, this thing can take that away in the blink of an eye. And it's by design. It's meant to be that way.
Yeah.
So that's why I say like get out of the like I had to stop kind of engaging with these pieces. I'm like, listen, you can say what you want about trans people. Like trans people are still going to exist. You can say what you want about, racialized people. There's some reports of Native American folks in the US like being considered not citizens and having to like prove identity because technically in like some old
Yeah.
proclamation. And it's like,
Wow.
what?
Yeah.
But the groceries. But the or sorry, but the trans and also so the last part on this is that it is not trans people who can't participate in sports. It is trans women who cannot participate in sports. And it is like predicated on the idea that no matter what, the man is superior to the woman. Because you
Well, I was
Yeah.
what
gonna say it's like the things like we're harping on like, well, I hate that we're like that the sorry. We're harping on the fact that like people are like focusing on only this part of the headline, focusing on all it's like a ripple effect of the values of who's in power. If you look at all the
Mhm,
people in power, what they value and how they perceive what has power, what has lesser value than this, it
mhm,
is rippled into everything of like their laws, how they talk about it, what they choose to focus on, what they
mhm,
push out into the media, like all of those things. That's all we're going to get is whatever brain is in power. That is the
Yeah.
ideas that lead.
mhm,
So you're not going to ever get space because our whole system is built on whoever is going to be the head, whoever's perspective, whoever's brain, whoever's in charge.
mhm,
That's who follows. That is our system.
mhm,
And until we change that system, that it's one
Yeah.
person in charge who gets to dictate how we legalize everything or how we even just think about everything, how we talk about everything, how we focus on groceries versus housing versus trans people versus all of these things instead
mhm.
of probably would have been better as a fucking community. Probably would
Yeah.
have been better as like anything other than just, okay, well, whoever's in charge that they get to say goes. That's it.
Yeah.
You haven't
Yeah. Yeah.
changed that. So you just keep changing your person in power, thinking that like, oh, I'm gonna get different values, but you haven't changed the system at all.
No. And that's
They're
the
saying all this talk that this is all going to happen, and then, the system is eventually going to realize that it's not working. And I'm just very,
It is
very,
working though. The system is working. It's just for who and for what.
there's
well, this is what I
something.
mean. This is what they're saying though. It's like some people like the people are like the curtain's being pulled back, like stuff's gonna change. And I was like, is it?
I think the collective, I
Gypsy.
mean, astrologically, I think as a human species, I think we're due for like a
Yeah,
shake
yeah,
up
yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
But like there was something I heard recently. I haven't dug much into it, so like if any academics are listening, don't come for me. But like if it's like settler anxiety and like this idea that like the settler even on this land because they are innately like displaced as well because they're not from this place. And so
Yeah.
everything that they've kind of built is based on myths. There's this doctrine, terra nullius, is that the word terra nullius, where it was like when they came over, they're like these lands are not inhabited, therefore we can inhabit them. But oh yeah, no, just ignore like those indigenous people. No, no, no. This is uninhabited. And so they sell this myth and then they use the media to sell it back to the Europeans and they're like, come to Canada, come to the new France. This is like the good place. So there's this settler anxiety of the fact that it will always kind of it always relies on myths. It always relies on mistruths. And so I think when trans people get their rights, it risks the unveiling. When racialized people get their voice and their innate power, it threatens them and they're scared and they're anxious. And so then they go to this like defensive protect mode. But
Yeah.
I don't know, people are really mad. And bitch, I got my matchbox. Like, let's fucking light it up. Let's light it up.
Set it
Burn
ablaze. So,
the shit down. Sorry, let me blow that out. Burn it down. That's unless
Burn
you
it
have another
down.
option. But I will
Yeah.
say, in a moment of hope, and maybe we can like come bring this back for everyone. This book, it's called Practicing New Worlds. It's by Andrea, sorry, Ritchie, Black queer woman. I was reading it last night before bed, and it was talking about like the importance of the micro. And so now we've talked about the state of the world and how we're feeling, and maybe we can go into like some solutions. And so some of the ideas that it like presented us, I'm going to read a quote where it says, do we need a mass movement or do we need networks of active cells that are able to intervene, prevent, and transform the everyday violences that we are experiencing? Do we need a mass movement to tell us all what we should be doing, or do we need small groups raising our awareness? Small, decentralized groups sharing information and resources that employ collective processes for decision making around shared things that everyone can access and that are guided by a set of shared principles. And I was like, yeah, why are we so because we know so much through social media, we're like, oh, I'm part of this massive network, and we are, and yet at the same time, like, what about our neighbors and like the people who we share
Yep.
space with, you know? Like what
Yep.
what do those smaller networks look like? And yeah, so I don't know. What about you guys? How do you reclaim some agency in this state of the world?
I'm a firm believer in the ripple effect.
Mm,
Like even even the stuff that we do through Luminesque, but how I carry myself through the world, and the more I can create a space around me to have conversations, to currently be, educating myself, but also others, that maybe will shift a perspective or someone else to encourage them to lead with love too, and then I
hmm
believe that then that builds a community and then that community can further impact from there. And so I
hmm
think sometimes we get into a place where we do feel really hopeless about it
hmm
all. Like you're bombarded with information so much, especially on these little devices. And I think like get out into your real life. Who's around you? What are you doing in your immediate building, friend group, community, city? Like what is happening in your like I think I don't know. That's all you can do sometimes. I mean, but
Yeah.
if it's and I also read something that was interesting. Not all people are meant to be activists. Like,
hmm
not me saying and sometimes I think with the state of the world, there are people that are going to be a little bit more vocal in the actual government systems and finding helplines and calling those and like be a bit more active with all that. And then there's going to be
hmm
people that their version of activism isn't going to be that. And you don't have to try necessarily force yourself to be that. I know that I'm more impactful with
hmm
how I lead a room, how I create a safe space, how I converse. That's my version of activism. That's, someone says something that I necessarily doesn't agree with my values. I will spark
hmm
up a conversation to maybe have that, like, that's how I change my own world to ripple out versus I think when all this, the George Floyd stuff was happening and there was like that big overhaul during the pandemic. And obviously
hmm
that should just be what it was interesting how that became such a huge movement. And then of course you could even see in like the black community too, like it's just gonna die out. But that stuff happens all the time. It's been happening all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think with social media, it's almost turned into this like, oh well, if I post this, then I'm doing my part without actually learning anything or like integrating it into your life. So I went on a huge tangent, but ripple effect, do your shit, talk to people, just I don't know,
Do what you
tangent.
can. No,
Do
do
what
it.
you
It's sort of
can.
like, yeah, do what you can and do what is in your community of
Yeah,
relationships, right? Because
yeah,
the ripple of the way you facilitate a room and a space and empower, so I'm trying to stop using empower. The way that you help people to realize their innate power
yeah.
is powerful. And then how that ripples into their friendships and their relationships. Like that is advocacy. Advocacy is a spectrum and back
Mhm.
to what we're saying in the beginning, Taylor, like respect, and like this practicing respect means like respecting the people who walk down the street, homeless people. Like even if you don't have money, like saying hi, my gosh, it's not like they're
Oh my God,
some
making eye contact, like that's the biggest thing. Just say hello. They're a
just
person.
say hi. Yeah, what about you, Taylor? What are some ways you survive?
Um,
The
Honestly,
open
like
app.
for me, I think I'm a hard-headed person. So like my values are my values and they're really firm.
Mhm.
And so I feel like I'm a really, or at least I try to be a really good example of a way to be like lead by example type of ripple effect type of thing. And so like when I have a lot of conversations where people don't agree with me a lot of the times, and I have a lot of hard conversations, and that I
Mhm.
think is just maybe my superpower. Of like that's just the way that I have to lead with activism, is that like I can hold space for those tough conversations of like we're going to talk about this. Let's
Let's
unpack
talk
this right
about it.
because this ain't it.
Yeah. And that's like a, I think that's like a beautiful gift to have all of those kind of players who think and see the world a little bit differently. And how do we still come together? Despite it all, there's like a mini story in this book about this black man, and I feel bad that I can't remember his name, but he has like in his life has had conversations with over like just over 100 Ku Klux Klan KKK members,
Wow.
I think
and
I've heard about that.
and
Yeah.
and they have turned away from that organization and that group just through one-on-one conversations, human relating to human, and that relationality piece that no matter what the system or capitalism seeks to do to separate us from our own bodies and from each other, like relationships matter. We are interconnected. These with these plants, with this fucking bunny that pisses on my couch while I'm doing my podcast. Like it's all interconnected and reciprocal. And so it was so beautiful to see this story of this man who we don't really know about necessarily. We're not talking about him, but yet he's done such amazing, impactful work on a micro scale. But these multiple micro moments, when we look at them together, are what help the kind of mass movement, I think, go forward.
Yeah.
Well,
Beautiful.
I think we should close out our episode for this fine Sunday in the state of the world. Any closing thoughts?
I have one.
Great.
Um, I think I we need to relinquish this. I like need to be good at it. Like you're gonna fuck it up. You're not gonna
Mm.
be the most safe space immediately right away. You're not going to say the right thing in the conversation that goes south or like is about a hard topic like it's racism or whatever. Like you're not going to maybe say the right exactly like that. Like you're not going to say the right thing all the time, and that's okay as long
Mhm.
as you are being genuine and as long as you are like we go back to what are you trying to say and who are you trying to say it, like what are you
Mhm.
actually,
Mm.
what conversation you actually trying to have, you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
100%.
Totally.
I end
Yeah.
every workshop off with like, go ahead, get messy. Because what did you do in school? You were praised for doing right or wrong. Like you were praised for doing a good
Yeah.
job. We've all been conditioned to want to do good and the right thing. And now to
Black and
resist
white.
that is to be like, no, fuck that. Like I said the wrong fucking thing and care about each other enough to bring each other back into a balanced relationship, whatever that looks like.
Compassion. Compassion and
Compassion.
respect.
Compassion, respect, reciprocity. These are some words to take into your week, to take into your month. Until we talk to you again, we love you. Take care. Respect each other. Love most people, maybe all. And we'll see you next time.
Love your neighbors.
Love thy
Love your
neighbor.
neighbors.
Bye.
Bye.